Hello there, and welcome back to the Sky Guys podcast. We are getting ready for Star Wars Podcast Day today. We're going to have a very fun discussion today about what is the best path forward for Star Wars. One of your hosts, Mike Phillips, here with me as always. The man who's always here. We're reconstructing the narration in a few weeks. Pete Considori is with us here. Pete, how are you?
Doing well, yeah. The narration's gonna get reworked. So new stuff, for the new YouTube channel and everything like that. So we're getting there. But yeah, doing well. Excited for the discussion today.
Yep. Also with us today, the creative director of this podcast, Nick's with us here. Nick, how are you?
Doing great. We have a great idea today for Star Wars Podcast Day 2025, and I'm excited to talk about this idea, which you can probably see in the episode title.
Yep, great podcast idea. We also have a great podcast guest here joining us for the first time. He has his own Star Wars podcast and a full content channel here. Memeobi's with us. Memeobi, how are you?
Hello there. I'm doing great. I'm really glad to be here, and I'm excited to talk Star Wars with you guys.
Yeah, so for the uninitiated, I let give people know like what you do for the Star Wars content and like where and like your podcast and stuff you cover.
Yeah, for sure. So my podcast is called Memeobi's Galaxy. And Memeobi comes from my Instagram. Run a meme page on Instagram called Obi-Wan Memeobi. I've been doing that for about 4 years. It's been growing really well. I just passed 55,000 followers, which is insane to me. I never thought I would ever get to that point when I started. Um, but yeah, I post daily memes, reels, the whole bit. Just recently got into podcasting, and yeah, so that's my main social media right now is Instagram. So, but I'm really excited to be here to talk about the future of Star Wars.
Yeah, Pete, we should definitely like pick up some point, try and get some brain drain from Memobi here for the follower count on the Instagram. But we can also give him some brain drain on the podcast front as well.
I mean, yeah, if you're up for it. I mean, we won't want to force him into that, but
Oh,
yeah, I
I'm,
mean,
I'm
that's incredible. I mean, congratulations. That's a great following, and I mean, kudos to you.
We definitely
no,
recommend the follow. The memes are fantastic.
thank you so much. No, I've worked pretty hard for it. I have some dry spells here and there, but I've been pretty consistent for the last 4 years straight, and it's paid off well. So yeah, no, I'm always excited to talk about social media or anything with anybody.
Yeah, and Pete, as we know, consistency is king in terms of getting engagement with the audience.
No, 100%. 100%. I mean, we've had our successes on Instagram, TikTok, and hopefully with the new YouTube channel coming up, we already have some content there. So yeah, no, consistency is key. Anyone wanting to do a podcast, really out there, it's the, you get on every week or every other week, whatever your schedule is, and just keep kind of grinding.
Yeah. They keep grinding here. And Pete wants subscribers in the Sky Guys. They do so Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon, all the usual suspects. Simply search for the Sky Guys here podcast platform and episodes there. And we're celebrating Star Wars Podcast Day today. This is sort of off-season month here in February as we're getting ready to, have some fun ideas, sort of be a palate cleanser between Stellar and Crew and Andor. This is one of those. Make sure you subscribe if you want to check out all that fun stuff.
100%. Subscribe, totally free. Helps us out, helps you out, get contact quicker. So definitely subscribe.
Yeah, and if you are subscribing to us also and you like the episodes, feel free to leave your feedback and your star ratings. Those will help people find us.
Yes.
Yep. And Nick, how can people follow us on social media?
At Sky Guys Podcast, pretty much everywhere, like Facebook and YouTubes and Instagrams and all that, Twitters, TikToks, but and Blue Sky, right?
Yeah, we are Blue Sky now too. We're
You
there.
did that. Yeah, you did that. But then also, if you want to email us, it's at Sky Guys Pod. We could not get at Sky Guys Podcast. It's at Gmail. I guess someone already has at Sky Guys Podcast at Gmail. I don't know who that is, but you beat us to it.
Yeah, I mean, somebody squatted on Sky Guys Podcast Gmail. So
That's wild. There's someone else out there with that exact name.
yeah, yeah, we don't know what they're doing. Maybe they're like into like planes or whatnot. I mean, maybe that's how they're Sky Guys.
Yeah, I actually think there is something.
Yeah,
I
so
actually think there's some. I mean, it's gone now. Whoever they are, we've buried them because if you type in podcast, they are not. They cannot be found. But I think there was someone out there who did like an airplane podcast.
yeah, someone got the Gmail, but we now crush them in SEO.
Yeah.
There
All
you
right.
go.
Yeah, so also mentioned here a couple of things here. This is also Star Wars Podcast Day, and everybody knows about this. I'll let everybody know about this here. We're celebrating Star Wars Podcast Day today, February 7th, 2025, when you're listening to this episode. This is a celebration of all Star Wars podcasts and Star Wars audio fan community. And This is the 25th year anniversary of the very first Star Wars podcast. The first episode of Jedi Talk aired on February 7th, 1999. So it's incredible to think of this community existed for over 25 years.
It's absolutely incredible. 25 years of podcasting with Star Wars, almost 50 years of Star Wars in general, which is even wilder or more wild, I guess.
We're
It's even more Van Wilder.
Yep. Even more Van Wilder for sure here. So I want to thank Star Wars Pod Day for including us in this. So very appreciative of them for getting us involved in this as well. And also, since Nick brought up social media, I'll go to our social media comment of the week here. So this is from our TikTok friends. This is our discussion of what Skeleton got right, Acolyte got wrong from our Skeleton Crew season 1 review podcast.
The eye patch, it's gone.
Yeah, the eye patch is gone. He's no longer a pirate.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is from Fox Force 5 on TikTok. He says, I wish they would have realized the show should have revolved around Chimera during the sorting process. No doubt season 2 be about him, Memeobi. I feel like, in terms of the Acolyte, I think the biggest missed opportunity of the show is that they did not give us enough Chimera content because he was really the star of the show.
Oh, I 100% agree. There's the whole Acolyte discussion is I'm definitely on the side where I want a season 2. I'm on that side of the internet. But yeah, I felt like there's a lot of things that just they missed slightly where it was enough off-putting that made it fail, I guess, in the end got canceled. But no, for sure. I think Chimera and I think it's sad because I do feel like they were just setting up a season 2 and they want to explore that. But since it did so poorly with ratings and stuff, that they didn't get to explore a lot of things that they should have just went ahead and did in the season 1, in my opinion.
Yeah, and P also draw your attention to the comment below from Bo Koopman says, finally, a take on Acolyte that isn't just Acolyte bad. So people recognize that we are, not just, beating the drum negativity the internet does.
I mean, I was always pretty positive on Alkalite. I mean, it had its problems, right? I mean, anyone that's listened to this podcast knows that, and I probably got roasted a few thousand times probably over the course of the show, whether it's from friends or online. But yeah, I mean, look, there's worse content out there. It's Star Wars. We love it. And I think just all negative all the time is never really the way to go. Even with Book of Boba Fett, there was a couple things I did say had its moments of positivity. Maybe not all, but it had its moments. So yeah, I mean, we're trying to just, be fair.
Yeah. To be fair, I mean, like this is not, did not get like spin move level bad from that show, but like there are definitely other issues. All right, and Nick, next up here, we'll get to our Star Wars news. We got a couple of things to discuss this week.
Yeah, George Nolfi who has written Ocean's 12 and The Bourne Ultimatum, has been hired to write the Rey movie. He is now the 4th writer who has been slated for this project, which is apparently set 15 years after the end of Episode 9, Rise of Skywalker, and features Rey training a new generation of Jedi. This is my personal opinion on this matter, is that if they have the 4th writer at this point, there's a lot of I don't know the word I'm looking for, like Disney interference. What would be the word I'm looking for? Like executive interference?
I'd say meddling.
Studio interference.
I'd say meddling is a good word. Studio interference is also pretty good.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of studio interference here where they want it a certain way, and a lot of creative, disagreements, if you will, where the writers eventually just say, I'm done. And now you're on your 4th one here, and we've said it before about a lot of video games, not necessarily movies, but when you start changing writers a lot, you start entering a place we like to call development hell.
That's for sure here. I mean, Moby, do you have any like optimism at all about this movie? I feel like there's a lot of like concerning development sides going on with this.
I have a lot of thoughts on this movie. It definitely shows that they're nervous is what it feels like, right? That's why it feels like they're changing writers a lot because they're not sure on like what direction to go because they are, in the end, they are trying to sell movies and they're trying to still sell stuff to people. So they have to make something that people will buy. So there's going to be a lot of cooks in the kitchen, you could say, just for the initial development to make sure that it's something good. But I think after all the Acolyte and then even the Skeleton Crew not performing as well as they wanted it to, I think they're probably looking into either changing it or like, because that's why they have the 4th writer, right? So like they're not sure on what they want to do because it is a touchy topic along the Star Wars community, right? Like even just having a Rey movie in itself.
Yeah.
I think they should. I have great ideas of what they should do with it, but I don't know. I'm not too worried about it. We'll see when it gets a little closer to when actually they pick directors and stuff like that. But I do see a lot of meddling, like you're saying. Like it does feel like there's a lot of people, but just it makes sense because it's a big company and they have to. It can't just have. It's not just George Lucas anymore making his movies, right? It's a whole company making a George Lucas movie.
Yeah, that's for sure here. Nick, what else we got?
Sorry, lost that mute button for a second. We also got the Bespin Bulletin is reporting that Rada the Hutt, who's going to be voiced rather by Jeremy Allen White, that's the guy from The Bear, in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie, is a gladiator who is being targeted for assassination by bounty hunter Embo, who was hired by the twins from the Book of Boba Fett. This to me seems you hear like a lot of people, especially nowadays, you never really heard this in the past, but nowadays you hear a lot of criticism of Dave Filoni in that he won't let his babies go. In that, like Ahsoka somehow she survived the Clone Wars, then she survived Rebels. Oh, she's alive in Mando. Or Ahsoka somehow she's still kicking, and it seems very much like that. It's like everything that he's created has to come back in a way. I'm not saying I necessarily hate the idea. I do hate the idea, but I'm not saying that. But I'm not. It just feels like it's true. Everything that has to come back. It's like he can't let anything go. Like I'm shocked Ezra's not. I mean, he will be there probably, right? Yeah. Oh, yes, he's still. I mean, Ezra's still alive in this time part of the timeline. So I just feel like everything and everyone he's ever done, like no one's ever died.
Yeah, Pete, this
Okay.
whole pitch sounds like a Dave Filoni fever dream, and to me, the more I hear about this movie, the more concerned I get about it.
I mean, that's just been the rhetoric of the Star Wars movies in general that we've been keep hearing about. It's just more concerning and more concerning. We always say it's too early to tell. I'm not gonna get my hopes up on any of these movies or any projects moving forward until we see some sort of finished product and just take it from face value.
Yeah, I mean, Mo, you think we get a trailer for this at Celebration this year, like sort of teaser?
I I think the best we will do is right because isn't season 4 of Mando coming out before the movie, right? Is that
I
correct?
I don't think there is a season 4 anymore. I think this
Oh,
replaces.
they just replaced it with the movie. Oof. I 2026, I think we're probably gonna get some more posters, I would imagine, of it. I don't know if we're gonna get a trailer. It is, I mean, the premise, right? That's insane. What an insane premise. The Jabba the Hutt's son is a gladiator. Is that what you said?
He's a gladiator who's being hunted down by Embo, who was hired by the twins from Book of Boba Fett.
That's a that is an option that they had. I mean, it's cool. I mean, I guess. I mean, it could be cool. I think it's interesting. They're not just doing run of the mill things, I guess, but being potentially the last Mandalorian, right? Like, we don't know. Who knows? They might do more shows. We never know. But being like the finale, it almost feels like it should be less centered on brand new. I mean, you can have new characters, obviously, right? But being centered on like just like random characters we know them, but like we don't care about in the Mandalorian. Like as a if someone's just watching the Mandalorian, they haven't watched all these other shows. They don't care about these other random characters necessarily, right? If they haven't watched Clone Wars.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I wish I was going to celebrations this year. I couldn't make it, but I'm going the next one for sure.
I think it's a wild pull, though. I mean, Riley the Hutt has been seen in 17 years.
Yeah. I mean, Embo's the guy with the crazy hat, right?
Yes,
Yep.
that's the guy.
Just another one of those guys. It seems like he can't let go. It's okay to let go.
Yeah. People can die. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, that is it for the news on this week's episode.
Yeah, the news is very fitting for this week's episode here. We're talking about the general question of the day. What is the best path forward for Star Wars? And the four of us are going to try and put our heads together, see if we can sort of come up with, what's the vision here? Like, how are we going to like move this brand forward here? And like, well, I think we'll all agree, Pete, that we've had some successes in the Disney era. I mean, obviously, I think we loved Rebels when we watched it. We've seen, good things from The Mandalorian. Clone Wars 7 was great. season 2 of Vision is great, but there've been plenty of misses. So I feel like there's room here to improve for Disney at the Star Wars run.
Oh, a
I
thousand
think.
percent.
Sorry, Pete.
You're good.
I genuinely apologize. I think before we start, we need to just hear it from himself, Memeobi.
Oh,
Being new on the podcast here, we
okay.
don't know your opinions. So, like,
Okay.
what are your things in Star Wars that you love? What are things you think are okay? What are things you generally dislike? Like, just so we know really
Oh
what we're dealing
gosh.
with here.
Okay, so like just like in Disney, like
Just
what
yeah,
my
just not even in Disney, just overall, just like what's your favorite movie? What's your least favorite movie? This is like some just
okay,
general things that we can just get
perfect.
to know.
Yep. So I was born in 95, right? So I was raised with the original trilogy before like the prequels came out. We watched them all the time with my older brothers. But I was a pretty ideal age for the prequels when they came out. So being that age, the prequels are pretty much my like out of my shelves. I have a lot more shelves for episode 1 and 2 than I have for even the original trilogy. I have no shelves for sequels, but that's fine. But so the prequels are like kind of like I guess you could say, people say my Star Wars, right? That was my trilogy. That's the one I watched the most. And then I love Clone Wars. I love Rebels. I wasn't sure on Rebels when I first started it. It was kind of clunky, but I love Rebels. It really finished out strong. Out of the Disney stuff, the movies were disappointing. For sure, Last Jedi's my least favorite. I love Mando. Didn't like Solo. Rogue One's killer. And I'm okay with Acolyte. I'm okay with Acolyte side of the world. And then Andor freaking killed it. I think Andor is kind of the way forward. I hope as long as they can clutch out this second season, I want to say last. If they can clutch out a second season, I think it could rejuvenate some fans into the Star Wars fandom a little bit after having their a bad taste in their mouth from the Acolyte, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it's a
So
great.
you passed the test. You're pretty much the same as us.
I think Memeobi brings a great point here, Pete, as well, because like some of the successes we saw with Rogue One and with Andor, to a lesser degree, Skeleton Crew too, showed you like you don't need the lightsabers in Star Wars. You can do intriguing Star Wars without having the Jedi in it. And I think like there's a whole interesting universe out there that like, and there isn't people in it that like we can explore if you choose to do so. And not everything go back to like these random 5 people who we see in every single product are the most important people in the entire galaxy.
Yeah, I think it's just an oversaturation issue. I think it's just there's a lot of the same stuff over and over. I mean, we've talked about before on this podcast that we'd love to get out of the timeline, right? It's been the same timeline or same, you know, basic few timelines that we've seen every single time. I mean, honestly, for me on this podcast, on this show, I have 3 words for Disney. Talk to George, right? Talk to the guy, make him involved a little bit more. It may be happening behind the scenes. I'm not going to sit here and confirm that it's not happening at all. Who am I, right? Like I don't have the information, but I mean, I just feel like there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think Dave Filoni is kind of like that middleman between George and Disney a little bit, and he's super passionate about it. Maybe that's why he can't let go of certain characters like we just spoke about. But I think I think the main gripe is the oversaturation of the timeline, the characters. They're all great characters. We'll love to keep seeing them. Let's try something else. And like you had mentioned, Mike, we don't need to see a lightsaber every single time. And when we did, even in Skeleton Crew, it was very minimal, right? It was nice. It was like an accoutrement, if you will, to the show. It wasn't the main purpose of the show as a Jedi. So oversaturation. That's kind of how I'm going to leave it.
Yeah, very fancy of the accoutrement.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I looked that up earlier.
Yeah, he did look it up earlier here, and I do think here there's a lot like in terms of the Disney front. Like I think we'd all agree, mixed bag. Like I think some of us like obviously had different pains on the movies and whatnot. And I will throw this out. This is my curiosity for you, Memeobi. Book of Boba Fett. What the hell do you think happened with this project? Like, why do you think this was the way it was?
Oh, God. Okay, so from what we had, I feel like if they just restructured it and just did it in chronological, that would have helped way more. Instead of just doing flashbacks and it kind of just back and forth, just gets out of the Sarlacc pit, and then just this is how he does it. I mean, I'm fine if they want to make him like not as hardcore and stuff, like whatever. Like if that's their directive choice, they want to do that. That's fine for me. He wasn't like I love Boba Fett. I always like Boba Fett, but he wasn't like I wasn't personally offended. Like I know a lot of people were because it's like, oh, this isn't my Boba Fett, right? Even though we like hardly had him. So like personally, I didn't really mind it as much, but I do think the structuring of it and then just having a Mandalorian episode in the middle of it was pretty whack. But like, yeah, you got some spins and you got some goofiness. Like for sure, there was some. I don't know what happened, but I think restructuring it would have like at least made people be a little more okay with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and Nick, I think a big point of the Disney sort of era here, I think, was a turning point with this one. It's just sort of like, and we talked before about these. This is probably about the studio meddling, with especially with the Ray movie. We definitely had studio meddling in the Boba Fett situation where they had Mandalorian and Grogu split up in season two of the show. They were a cash cow. Disney executives going, "Oh my God, we're not going to be able to sell our stuff anymore. We need them together." So they just threw them back together in the middle of season two, middle of Boba Fett, a whole separate show, and then show up season three and you didn't watch it. You're like, what the hell just happened here? Why are they back together all of a
Oh,
sudden?
you don't have to tell me twice. I know, but I
Yeah,
think what went wrong
I,
is I think what went wrong here was this was clearly, whether you want to admit it or not, it's supposed to be a mafia show. He was supposed to be the leader of the Tatooine Mafia,
sure.
but it was rated PG. There's a reason The Sopranos is on HBO and not Cartoon Network.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Like that, I don't really get offended by it the way like Memobi said he saw people are offended in a way like not my Boba Fett. I don't really care about that, but like when you're gonna do a show about a mafia leader who's gonna be like running the underworld with spices, let's get real. What are spices? The drugs. So like, how do you make this rated PG? Which essentially it was. I know they don't really have specific rate. I mean, I guess they do somewhere on Disney Plus, but it's not really the same as like a movie. But like that needs to be rated R. That needs to be on HBO.
Yeah. I think Pete's a great point. Because I consider the teaser for Boba Fett, the Mando 2 post-credit scene. You have him being busy being a badass, walking into Jabba's palace, shooting Bib Fortuna in cold blood, throwing his body off the throne and just claiming it. And then he's nowhere near that badass in the entire show, which is like that's a very jarring disconnect.
I mean, it's not even just the characters' traits, it's just the trajectory of what the show we thought was going to be versus what it was, right? You just mentioned it. The trailer was like this badass, like, boom, killed in cold blood. This is my town now. And it turned into a, let me tell you about my childhood. Or let me tell you about how I got out of the pit and hung out with the Tusken Raiders and learned how to dance. You know, like it just seemed very I mean, Memobi put it perfectly. The structure was just all over the place. Restructure it a little bit, maybe we have a little bit more success. So yeah, just a to me a nightmare.
Yeah, I also want to go back to the point that we were making where Nick made the point about Boba. Is this the I think the turning point for I think the movies will deal with it in their own perspective. That's a whole separate problem why we haven't been in the movies in 7 years. But on the TV front, we were cruising along with Mando. Everything's going great. They filmed the first two seasons back to back, and then they make the decision with the story. Okay, we're splitting up Mando and Grogu. Grogu's going to train Luke Skywalker on Jedi. Mando's going to do his own thing. Some point between season two and filming season three, Disney executives have a panic attack. Go, oh my God, we can't sell our merch. They need to be together. And as much as Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni claim, oh, this was always the plan to come back together right away. You know it wasn't. You know that this was an order from on high saying, put them back together as fast as possible. We did it in a separate show. So we got Mandalorian back in season three. You just show up and you're like, wait, what? If you didn't watch Boba Fett. So, Mimo, what do you think about that decision from Disney as a whole? Sort of like, it feels like that this is the case where I feel like the marketing and the merch overrode what the original story plan was for those two.
I mean, I see that side of it, right? But in the end, like we're still buying Luke Skywalker stuff, and he hasn't been, like, the original trilogy was forever ago. So I think they could have still been selling stuff. I think it's crazy that they didn't just make that episode one of season three of Mando, right? Or at least a recap.
Yes.
Because I do know people that watched Mandalorian after it was at season three and were very confused. And like you're saying, just like what's going on? Like not having a recap at the first of season three is crazy. Like having Grogu in the Book of Boba Fett was, I don't know. You should just had Mando just doing his thing and just comes and help Boba Fett. That's fine. Like I don't even mind that Mandalorian's in it. That doesn't bother me at all. They already established that they're friends or whatever in season 2 of Mando, but I think it's wild that Grogu showed up. I think if it wasn't for that, I think the show would do better after that as well, right? Like, and I think season episode 1 should be Mando going to get Grogu in season 3, right? Like, I feel like I can't say if it was like higher up saying like merch and stuff like that. Like, that's hard to say, but I do think it was crazy.
Pete, do you think there was a directive from on high to reunite them in spite of what Favreau's original plan might have been?
I mean, just like we said, it's tough, right? I mean, we're not there. We're not making the decisions. From the outside looking in, that would be my guess.
Yeah.
I think it's a good guess, but I don't know if that's the reality of it. If it was the original plan, maybe they felt like they couldn't get it done in season 3, so they said, let's put it in Book of Boba Fett. Maybe it'll get more people to be in Book of Boba Fett or whatever. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of possibilities. My money is on the marketing aspect of it, but just my opinion, not confirmed.
Yeah, for sure. I think let's also get into, I think we got to talk about these movie situations a little bit because for a while, I mean, we all grew up with the prequel trilogy where, it was like you got a movie in 1999, a movie in 2002, and a movie in 2005. And then I guess technically, yes, you could throw the Clone Wars movie in there in a way, the anime movie. I don't know how many people actually went and watched that in theaters, but like it's amazing that Memeobi did. So, Nick, did you watch it in theaters?
No, we've been over this where it came out at an interesting time for us where I was 15, 16, I think.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not watching a cartoon. I don't want to see this. And then I didn't watch Clone Wars till about season 2 or 3. And I was like, oh man, I should have watched this the whole time. And then I started watching it.
Yeah, for sure. Then, like, once Disney gets the property back, we get the announcement sequel trilogy, and they plan to do these films like in between the trilogy movies. So we had Force Awakens in 15, comes out, huge positive reception. Everybody loves the movie at the time. And there's been people walking it back after the fact, because what happened to sequels, saying, "Oh, this is a bad movie." But I point that out. You had Rogue One, which was everybody loves it, and it's one of the most popular things ever made. Last Jedi, we know what it is. We know how polarizing it is. Solo flops. Rise of Skywalker flops. We did not have a movie until Mandalorian Grogu in 2026. So, me, Moby, like on the movie front, how do you think Disney has done here?
Well, okay, so I do think it's The Force Awakens' fault that The Last Jedi sucks. Now, here's my reason. I talk about this all the time.
I
The
agree with
reason
you.
it's my main complaint is that they ended on a cliffhanger. So it ends on a cliffhanger. That means the next movie has to start literal 0 seconds from the last one, pretty much, right? Like you can't not pay that off. So the opening crawl has literally nothing to talk about. It's just like, yep, they're still running from the get bad guys. So now, granted, with that, I still think they could have handled The Last Jedi better than they did, even with a cliffhanger situation. What I really think they should have done, just hindsight, I like Ryan Johnson. I'm fine with him. I just think he should have made one of the standalone movies. I think he should have been and go subvert all the expectations you want, and I think it could have been fine. I'm not a fan of Solo, but I do think Solo was hurt from The Last Jedi, right? It came out the next year. I do think there was some boycotting and some people mad about Star Wars. But and then I was fine with the Rise of Skywalker. I think it's like I first like most people like they go back and forth in my comment section of like either they think that the Rise of Skywalker is the worst or the Last Jedi is the worst. I think the Last Jedi is definitely worse, but that is just my opinion.
Yeah, Pete, my thought with this also is here. You think we're into an oversaturation problem here with the Star Wars movies as well, where you got so used to, oh, wait, you have to wait, you savor the movies you get here. Then they started going, oh, we're gonna go Marvel, have a movie every year. And remember, before Rise of Skywalker flopped, we had plans for a Boba Fett movie, a Kenobi movie. Those got reworked into stuff. And I'm sure they had a couple other ones that they have floating around they haven't gotten to yet. And the idea is still floating around here. I wonder if they tried to be too aggressive with the movies. And that's something we could see them repeating here because they right now are on track for a movie in 26, a movie in 27, a movie in 28, a movie in 29. It feels like they're going down the same path that did not work from the first time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought up Marvel because I think that's a great comparison in that it's no comparison. Marvel is its own thing. I think it, not to say it's an anomaly, but the way that they were able, Marvel Studios was able to create three phases over how many years and how many movies and make it honestly intertwine and end beautifully for three phases to me is crazy. Um, that was a home run. I think Star Wars saw that and said maybe we could do that, and I just don't think Star Wars is made for that. I think Star Wars, like Memeobi said, is end it each movie, right? There's a finish, so you can have the next movie have its own crawl. You get a little bit of backstory, and you start from scratch. Same characters, same overarching themes, but different movies that all connect to complete a story, and that's Star Wars. I think they tried to do the Marvel thing and it failed hard. And I think they're going back to it. And I think instead of having seasons of shows, they think we can just do this with movies. A lot bigger budget, a lot more on the line with movies. Not the smartest choice, in my opinion.
While also still doing shows, by the way. They have shows planned.
Yeah, but I mean, let's call it what it is. They're bigger A-list stars are going to be in the movies. They're A-list characters, right?
Yeah.
So that's the part that they're really putting a lot on these movies. They're really, really, really gambling on these, in my opinion.
Nick, in terms of the Marvel comparison here, like I think it's all interesting because like I'm sure Disney again owns both of these. They said it worked for Marvel, let's do it for Star Wars. And we've seen now with the last few years that like there has been a reckoning with the Marvel stuff where a lot of people are saying there's too much, the quality has slipped, like we can't do this. Even I think Bob Iger said we're putting out everything we had made in 25 because it was made, we have to get it out. But like after that, we're really slowing down what we're doing. So I think it's interesting that Star Wars has not sort of slow down what they're doing right now.
They kind of have, though, right? How many live action shows a year did we have as compared to what we have now? That number has
Oh,
definitely decreased.
yeah, they went from three to two.
So they have pulled back a bit, and Marvel suffers from the every other thing now, which is like every other thing they put out is awful, and every other thing they put out is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's like, just example, like um, Thor, I didn't like, but the one that came after it was really good, or which was oh God.
There's too many Marvel things.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, I guess that's the point. There's too many. But I remember seeing Thor, didn't like it. The next movie I went to go see, I did like.
I think next week I think it was Black Panther was the next one.
I did like Black Panther, but that wasn't what I was referring to. Maybe I was with the shows, whatever. Every other thing they put out is pretty good. And when it comes to what we're doing here with Star Wars, there is an oversaturation now, or there was in the TV show front, but I think they have pulled it back a bit, and I think it's in a good spot now. I think two live action shows is really good for them, and not to mention for us. We get to talk about it, but I don't think that's on the high list of priorities for them. But but the movies are a completely different issue.
Yeah.
I I don't know. Like they're going back into theaters, I guess next year, right? Mandalorian and Grogu is
That's,
coming out next year. That's the plan.
yeah, next Memorial Day weekend we'll be watching this movie.
I don't know about you. I'm going. I mean, I know you're going, whatever. I'm a little worried about who's going to turn up to the theater.
Yeah.
I know my friends, the Star Wars fans, you know them. I know Pete's friends and whatnot. Your friends, Mike, they're going to go. But I'm worried about the common person. I'm worried about the guy. Like I always use this as an example. I'm worried about my father. My dad's not going to go.
Yeah.
He went to the Force Awakens opening night. He was so excited. Oh man, I loved Star Wars when I was a kid. There's no chance in the world he goes.
Yeah, I mean, Moby, are any of your casual friends gonna like be drawn in if this is rumors are true? Like, this is the movie about Rada the Hutt being like hunted down by Embo and Mandalorian has to save him.
Listen, I'm just excited for a buff Hut, right? He's a gladiator. That's gonna be sick. But I do agree. It is interesting to have a movie that is basically a finale of a season of a show, where if you don't have like, because like people are like, oh, Star Wars, they normally just go watch it, right? They say, oh, it's a trilogy or it's a standalone. But this isn't technically a standalone, right? Like traditionally, because it has three seasons of shows behind it. So it is interesting that it's coming out in theaters. I almost expected originally that it would be like they would just do like an episode less on the show, season four, and then finish it out with like a movie, quote unquote, but on Disney Plus. So I know there's conflicting reports on a season four and a movie. I'm still holding out hope that there's going to be a season four, and this will be after that. So I'm holding out that at celebrations we're going to get a season four announcement. But again, but like you said, like even with that, that even makes it worse for the movie goers because now it's like end of a season four, and casual people will be like, I don't know what this is. I don't know if I want to see it. It's just a Star Wars thing. And it's like Marvel, the whole Marvel conversation. I worry that people are now thinking, "Oh, I don't want to get into Star Wars now. There's so much. Where do I start?" I'm
Yeah.
like, listen, guys, there's six movies. Just watch them. It's fine. And then if you like more, there's extra.
Yeah, we don't want the homework conversation like you have with Ahsoka.
Oh,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. So much homework with Ahsoka. Who's this guy with the beard? Who's this blue guy?
Yeah.
Who's like?
It should
Yeah,
have been animated.
yeah, that was a whole other situation here. I do think on the movie front also here, like I think Solo is an interesting conversation point here because like Pete, I know on we haven't done Solo in depth on the podcast, but I know like our thing was like it was aggressively fine, but like I think as Memobi said, like it was hurt by its place and coming right after Solo, and people forget about this. It came out the same like month as Infinity War when people were.
Endgame.
Uh, it was. I thought it was no. That was. Oh, it was Endgame. I thought
No,
it was
you're right. No, you're right. It was Infinity War.
Infinity War because
Yeah.
Infinity War was the bigger deal. And like I remember at this point, like I had a friend of mine who was a big Star Wars guy as well. And I'm like, like, do we want to go see the Solo movie or we go watch Infinity War a second time? And the choice was Infinity War a second time because Solo was not screaming out to us.
Thing.
Yeah, I mean, terrible, terrible timing to release anything. I mean, you're coming to a conclusion of probably one of the craziest three-phase movie franchise ever, and you're coming off the heels of a really bad Star Wars movie, and now another Star Wars item's coming out. I mean, you guys said it best. It's like who's going? So timing was everything for that. Content-wise, the movie's good. Is it fantastic? Does it knock my socks off? No, but I'll watch it. I enjoy it. It opens up the doors to a lot of possibilities that they probably should look into, right? Darth Maul, just going to throw that out there, or Mr. Maul, as we say. Let's just throw that out there as a possibility for something moving forward. But timing, like you guys said, timing was terrible.
Yeah. He remember that
It was so
conversation
bad. The
for next
timing was so bad that I have friends who are diehard Star Wars fans who have watched everything there is to watch in terms of movies and shows and played the games and whatnot. Who we would go to every movie together from Attack of the Clones on. Phantom Menace, we were a little too young to go with our friends. But night of, guys, are you coming? We didn't buy tickets for this movie. Nah, I think I'll wait. That's how poorly the timing was.
Thing.
Yeah. 6 months after Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
I mean, after Last Jedi.
I still went without them, but I used to go with a big crew of people.
Yeah.
Didn't go with a big crew of people to that one.
Crew
And it's not like Disney would have been blindsided by the release date of the other thing that they own, right? Like, like they should have known. Just put it out a couple months, do a summer release. Like it's not. I don't know. I don't know what they were
actually
shooting
think they
for.
should have just stuck with they were doing it consistently, and I think it was working.
Yep.
Even with The Last Jedi not being up to par, in my opinion, and many others' opinions, the December model was working. That week before Christmas was really
Mhm.
good. It was like, don't forget, we got to see Star Wars the last week of the year before Christmas. Like everyone,
Yep.
that was like in my mind that I saw The Force Awakens, Rogue One, and The Last Jedi back to back years. They could have just continued that trend.
Yeah, that's the only one of the Disney releases that did not go on December.
Yeah, I'm confused as to why. I don't know if they had another movie that was in that slot in its place. Obviously, it wouldn't be a Star Wars movie, another Disney movie that took its spot at the end of December in
Probably.
2018. But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm going to go back and look that up because I do think it's interesting in terms of that situation. But Pete, in terms, I know you mentioned some of the stuff for the mall and whatnot. So, like, remember that for next week's episode because next week's episode we're talking a lot about that kind of stuff.
A
That's
little
great.
foreshadowing.
Yes, a little foreshadowing here. I think we can talk about the Disney TV shows too a little bit because obviously they have the thing that catches fire with Mandalorian. They have the live action shows where Boba we talked about a few minutes ago. Little miss. Kenobi was a mixed bag. We know some people loved it, some people hated it. We had obviously Andor, great reviews. Ahsoka got some, like I feel like people started higher on it and got lower on as the show went on. Skeleton Crew we discussed. I think obviously Mando 3 did not end up too great in terms of people's perceptions. Out of the last two shows here, I feel like this thing that we talked about here in terms of the timeline being an issue. Well, we all know about if you feel the same way. I feel like there is sort of like I talk about this is sort of like you have this entire infinite timeline, and most of these Star Wars shows try and fit onto the space of postage stamp, try and fit into this window. Like we had to fit between the start of the original trilogy and the Mando timelines. You have like maybe like 20 years to play with, which is not a lot of time to tell stories where you're not constantly tripping over each other with terms of continuity and canon and have people on the internet going, oh, but Kiadi Mundi wasn't born yet.
No, I completely agree. I do feel like the I because right, money. So they feel like they want to, like the Acolyte specifically, right? That's the farthest we've gotten from the Skywalker saga, like in years wise. Um, and I was worried when I heard it was 100 years before. I was like, "Ah, Yoda's gonna show up in some aspect." I'm like, man, I feel like what they should have done retrospectively on the Acolyte, they should have went pre, like, not like High Republic, because I think they don't want to piss off all the book lovers of the High Republic, which are great books. I think if they just went right before that and then just did everybody new, everybody brand new, no connections to anybody, and just created all brand new characters. No one can hate them. No one, like, if they don't like them, they don't like them. But there's no one, you're not messing anybody up, right? That's why, like, I think Andor works, because it's like you can't really mess up a character because like we knew him, right? Like, but like we know he's gonna die, so it's like it's not as bad. And that was, my hope was it would be all brand new characters they couldn't mess up because we don't know them. But then they wanted to have Plagueis and stuff. So like, but here's my worry, because there was rumors of a Dawn of the Jedi type movie. Eventually, my worry, and I think it's been confirmed, they're going to go too far back. They're going to go so far back where they're discovering, it's going to be lame. It's going to be a guy and a girl. They're going to discover the Force. One's going to be like, oh, this way is easier. No, let's do this. And then I don't know. I worry they're going to go so far back it's going to be lame, when all we really want is like High Republic. We want like 30 Jedis versus 30 Sith. Like, that's all we want. But I think they're too scared to go too far back for
Yeah.
some reason.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Dune prophecy problem as well. Where it's sort of like where like if you watch the show, it's like you watch the movie, it's like you could barely tell. I mean, apart from them telling you, oh, was that supposed to be 1,000 years before the movie? Like you watch it, act the same way. It's like this feels like it's gonna be 5 minutes before this movie. It doesn't fit, like feel like it's too far back.
I would agree. But yeah, I think honestly, well, I mean, I know we're not talking about it yet, but I do think it'd be really cool. What people, I don't know. I don't know why they don't know what we want. Maybe I'm on an outline of like what I want in Star Wars, but it feels like there's a general consensus. We just want like High Republic. Heck, I think people would be down with like a Sith movie, like a Sith planet, like a full Sith, like Civil War. Like, I don't know why they don't see that we want these things. We just want people to use the Force and fight with lightsabers.
It's
Which the
so
Acolyte had good lightsabers for sure, but it failed on the other sides of it, I think.
Yeah, I'll also say this, when we get to the end and we talk about what the best fast forward is. I've been saying it for years. Knights of the Republic is right there. It's been sitting there for 15 years and they've not touched it. And like it's
Yep.
probably one
More
of
than
the
that, no?
what say
I think even more than that, right?
more than that in terms of like not being touched. Because I mean, I think the Revan book kind of ends the story of it theoretically, but like this is something that has like near universal approval rating among Star Wars fans, and they have not touched it.
And like I get it, right? Because like from a filmmaker and a director, you don't always want to just like do an adaptation of a book, because that is really hard. And I do not envy anyone who makes a movie about a book, because everyone that liked the book is probably not going to be happy. Like that's just how it goes. That's why I feel like we should just do something new. Just go either really far in the future, just like 1,000 years in the future, and just do something new, or like 1,000 years in the past and do like some Sith we don't know about. Like do a Sith planet. There's a great book about a Sith planet in like the extended universe they had. Like they have a lot of content that you can steal from, and they do, but I feel like I don't know. I don't know why they won't just I don't know why they don't hear us. I mean, granted, I don't know. I don't know why they don't. Maybe the people that like Star Wars wherever they work just don't like what we like, I guess.
Yeah, Pete, it's a great point. We thought Acolyte was going to do this a bit in terms of like expanding the timeline, but they stuck it too close to what we're used to and then sort of didn't really distinguish it in terms of like, oh, this looks like it should, like we talk about when we're watching the show, like the technology does not feel like 100 years predate. It feels like it's the exact same technology they're using right now. So it's like it doesn't feel like it's the same. It's a different time period. Aside from the fact they wore different robes, but I think like it's something I feel like they are torn between like, do we want to be more creative with our story, or do we want to just, rely on our comfort food that we know will get people engaged and stick Darth Vader in everything, or get pop up Yoda, or bring in a Skywalker?
Yeah, I mean, I want to highlight what Memobi said, and I think it's huge. I would just say new villain. I mean, I think every single time we've discussed a good Star Wars show or a good Star Wars movie, there is a new villain. There is someone who is mysterious that we're learning about his or her quirks. We're learning about how dark they are. We're learning about how evil they are. And that kind of draws us into the good side as well. How to battle. Balin's Skull, Thrawn from Rebels.
I,
All these different new villains is what drives. Darth Vader for the original trilogy was this big bad. Who the hell is this guy, right? That drew the audience as well, I'm sure, back, in the 70s and 80s. So, like Memobi said, go to a Sith planet, just introduce a brand new Sith that you just came up with. It doesn't have to be from a book. You don't have to have not to say it's not difficult. I can't do it. I'm not going to say that it's easy, but the there is something to be said about the dark side of the Force when it comes to Star Wars. And normally, even you see it with the kids, the dark side of the Force usually has the most merchandise being sold, the most interest, the most backstory, the most emotion toward it. And I feel like that's what Star Wars needs to do.
Yeah, I'm gonna toss it back to me, Moby, as well, because it's his point. Like they did kind of do this twice and then did not handle it correctly. One was with Chimera with the Acolyte, where like the scuttlebutt was that Leslie Headland did not plan to reveal his identity in season one, which was a mind-boggling call. That somehow I don't know how that wasn't even a thing. And then we had Kylo Ren, who was probably one of the best parts of the sequel trilogy and was going on his own interesting path before they neuter it in Rise of Skywalker and sort of retconned to fit in with every other, oh, he turned good at the end kind of situation. I think like they had interesting villains. I don't know whether it was corporate meddling or bad writing decisions, but they don't utilize them correctly.
Yeah, it definitely is interesting. I do feel like people would be more okay moving forward with movies if Kylo was the one to survive, or heck, even both of them. Like, change it up. Like, do like a kind of like a situation with Luke in the extended universe where like he meets Mara and they have like a marriage and Jedi are able to be married. Like, because I think people did really like Kylo. And at the time, people didn't really like Rey. People still are not okay with her. And I feel like just from a marketing standpoint, right? Like having Kylo be the one that continues the Jedi Order or not, I think people would have been more interested in following his story. And I mean, I get like it's fine. Like I'm glad they kill people off. I think it's fun because it is different, right? It's different than just keeping everybody alive all the time like Star Wars is. I'm fine with people getting killed off, but I just think it was the wrong one to kill off because he was a kind of compelling character and Adam Driver did such a good job of keeping him really consistent through the movies. Like in my opinion, he has the best arc of out of the whole sequel trilogy that I feel like is compelling and like it makes sense to me. It worked for me really well. And then the Acolyte just had so many problems, mainly pre to like actually releasing. Like I know here's a crazy story. I know two people. One guy just watched the interviews before the Acolyte, and he's decided he was never going to watch it, and he hated the Acolyte. I have another friend who just didn't have Disney Plus and hadn't watched it yet. And they had a full blown argument about The Acolyte, which neither of them had watched, which is just telling of our current state of the world, sadly. But again, it's all that, it was all those pre interviews that like, because they did a bunch of like pushing it. They'd have a bunch of influencer come out to premieres. They had a bunch of interviews. They were really pushing for The Acolyte to be big. And it just, that kind of made it flop. Like people were mad about certain things they were saying on the interviews. Like they were saying, I mean, they were saying wild stuff like Anakin blowing up the Death Star. Like that made people mad. Saying that R2D2 was lesbian. Like that made people mad. Like, but like I don't know. They tried and they failed on a lot of fronts, I think.
Yeah, Nick, before we go forward here, I want to talk about the Kylo point real quick because I do think we talked about this too. How we was pretty clear at the last Jedi was setting up the whole idea that, Kylo was like very content, just like usurp the power from Snoke and say, okay, this is my empire now, and I'm gonna rule everything, and I don't care if I go back. And they walked it back after episode 8 and sort of had him just, like fall in love with Rey and feel bad when his mom died and redeem himself and then die saving Rey's life. So I do think like we had potential with Kylo Ren, but like they sort of, saw the reception to episode 8 and said, no, we got to change it and make them so like he's a redeemable story at the end.
I agree. I think they did a lot in 9 that were just contradictory of 8, but we've said it before. I've said it before. What I liked and appreciated about Kylo was that he was everything Vader wasn't. Not that he was better than Vader, of course not. I'm not crazy, but when Vader's whole thing was, he said it to Padme immediately on Mustafar. He said, "We're going to overthrow the Emperor. We're going to rule the galaxy together, make things the way we want them to be." I think that's his exact quote, actually. You could see right away, which all Sith do, that he had the intention of overthrowing his master. Now, did he ever do that? I mean, technically, he kind of did, and considering he killed him, but he was already redeemed at that point, so it's a little different. Kylo actually did it. He actually went through with it. He actually murdered his master, similar to what Palpatine did to Plagueis, or at least what Palpatine tells us he did to Plagueis. And he actually did that, and it was interesting because when you first are introduced to Kylo in The Force Awakens, you see him behind the mask and whatnot. He takes the mask off. You say, "Oh, he's kind of a good-looking guy." It's Adam Driver. We all know Adam Driver, but like the thing that kind of gets you is when you learn that he's Han and Leia's son. You immediately, as the audience, you're saying he's going to be good. He's going to be a good guy. There's no way they would introduce Han and Leia's son and make him this ultimate bad. And for those first 2 movies, what they did was actually he is the ultimate bad. He kills Han Solo right in front of all these people, including Chewie. He fights them out in the snow. He's screaming at them. He ended up losing that fight, which was absolutely ridiculous, if you ask me. But that's not the point. And then in episode 8, he not only does he kill Snoke, he makes it look like he's killing Snoke to save Rey, which is semi-true, but he also says to her like, "Yeah, like I'm not with you. Like I'm still trying to rule this stuff. You in or not?" Which is another thing where it's just like he is the ultimate bad, and then you're right, in 9 they're like, "Actually, I'm not."
Yeah.
Which
He's
is
like,
kind of the whole thing in 9 too, like with what's his name? Who was the guy? Hux. And he's like, "I'm the spy." It was just
yeah.
like a lot of that stuff going on in 9. A
Yeah,
lot of that stuff.
yeah, you're like, wait, what? Like you're the spy? Why?
Yeah, a lot of that stuff happened in 9 where it's like, wait, there was no previous communication on this. How did this happen? Like Palpatine, like you're my granddaughter, and Rey's like, wait, why? Why does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. There
it
was a
doesn't
lot.
make, like a lot of the stuff, just like, wait, what? You could there was nothing in 7 or 8 that potentially at all was a clue to this being the case, but I guess that's how it was.
Yeah, I think episode 9, watching that movie experience in theaters, I mean, there was a lot of chaos in it. And I mean, there was a lot of just, sitting there just thinking when you're watching that movie, it's a lot of, the Vince Lombardi, what the hell's going on out here with this movie?
Yeah, I said it before too. I think has to do what we were talking about earlier with the Last Jedi and the audience and people getting like boycotting, getting pissed off. But when I saw the Last Jedi in theaters, this was the December release. This was an episodic release, a little bit different than Solo. I can cut them some slack. But seeing The Force Awakens and Rogue One and Last Jedi, packed theater, lines out the door. You had to get there an hour early to get inside. When I saw The Rise of Skywalker, theater was half empty. Really weird. And I always say this, and we never found the reason to this why this was. When I saw The Rise of Skywalker, there was zero previews. I've never seen that in the movie before. I don't know if it was a mistake. It was just like my friends were like, "I'm gonna get some popcorn." We got 15 minutes. It just started. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Guys, you're missing the movie." I've never seen that before. I don't know why that happened. I don't know if that was a mistake on the theater's part, but that was really weird.
Yeah, and Memobi, my experience of Rise of Skywalker also was interesting because like we went to it. I think me and like a bunch of friends went to like a 10 o'clock showing, 9 o'clock showing, and like the audio on the movie was so bad they had to go. It went 15 minutes. Somebody had to go out in the theater, get the attendant, start it over. Like sitting there, I'm like, that's not a good sign for the quality of this movie. That like we had to, relive the first like 15 minutes again.
No, that is funny. No, I think when I went and saw it, I definitely went with a larger group of friends. I think at the time, it's so vague now because it was kind of unmemorable, sadly. Like I remember Force Awakens very specifically, and then Last Jedi. I remember, but then the Rise of Skywalker. I don't know why I don't remember that day as much as I feel like I should. But I mean, I don't know. Again, that was before I was in the like social media side of things, and like I watched Star Wars. I love Star Wars, and I cared, but I didn't really overthink things or like think about like what people might think or like I didn't care about news. I didn't even know people didn't like things. I liked what I liked. I didn't like what I didn't like. So nowadays, like watching shows and stuff, it's so different coming from like a creator side from perspective. But yeah.
Yeah, so I think this is a good point. I think we kind of, dove like all over the place on the Disney stuff. We didn't really touch the animation. I think we all kind of agree. Like the animation seems to be like the highlight of Disney, but that's a whole other discussion out here. But like we know for sure that we're getting a second season of Andor. We know we have this Mandalorian Grogu movie. The right movie we talked about before. We have this Mandoverse Team Art movie floating out here. The James Mangold, Force of the Jedi movie that's terrifying me, Moby, about the potential of its development. We have that one, and then this movie that Sean Levy is doing that apparently Ryan Gosling is starring in. That's the other new thing that's being added to the calendar here. So a lot of movies, a lot of options. I think they're going to try and do the yearly thing again starting in 2026. But I think we all think that's not the greatest plan. So if anyone wants to take the floor here, like what would your approach be with Star Wars going forward? Like what's the emphasis here? Like what would your plan of attack be? Anybody wants to go?
I will go. I will go first.
Okay.
It's short. I don't have much. I don't have I don't have an in-depth plan created by AI. This is just my thoughts right now. Um, I think going into the theater next year with The Mandalorian and Grogu is a good idea.
Yes.
I think that you're going to go back into theaters. Obviously, you need to have a main character in your movie, right? That's most obvious thing I think anyone's ever said on this podcast. But it can't be Luke Skywalker. So unfortunately, Mark Hamill is just not young enough to do that anymore. I mean, I know you can do the face scan the way you did with the CGI with the Mandalorian. I don't think people would really appreciate that.
Recast.
I don't think people would appreciate that either. I don't think you can throw in a movie with Anakin. It just doesn't really work considering like even in Ahsoka it looks kind of weird, but it makes sense because it's like a ghost, a kind of ghost, whatever. But anyway, it can't be them. It can't really be Rey, I think, because of the internet and the rest of the world being split on the character. So I think The Mandalorian is the logical choice on who you want to go with to throw into the theater that everyone seems to be. Oh, there's not. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong. Is there anyone out there who's like, oh, I hate Mando. Like I like the rest of Star Wars, but I hate Mando. I don't think so. I'm sure they exist. I'm sure there's someone, but not many. So I think that's the safe choice. Throw Mandalorian in a movie. You have Grogu, who, my opinion, I think you are years late on the Grogu train. I think his time came and went. I still love Grogu, but I think his time came and went where he's not a popular figure anymore. Like you don't see him. You see him on everyone's backpack and whatnot. I don't think you see that anymore. I'm sure you do in Disney World, but not really. Walking around Times Square anymore. So I think it's a safe idea to go into the theater with them, and I really think what they're doing is correct right now. And the reason why is we talk about this all the time, Mike. What do I always say whenever you bring up the rumor of a new movie? What do I say?
You say like, it's never happening.
And I believe that. Not that it's never happening, but it's probably not happening. And the reason why is these are just rumors. They're hanging on the shelf and they're ready to grab them as soon as they're ready. They're going to put this Mandalorian movie out. If it does well, they're going to grab an idea and put it in the shopping cart. If it doesn't do well, they're going to leave it there. So this is the test the waters type of movie. How do we do in theaters? Are we ready to go back? If we're ready to go back, take something off the shelf and put it in your cart. Well, maybe it's this Dawn of the Jedi movie or this Rey movie, whatever it may be. Then we're ready to go because we have some ideas here. If it doesn't go well, we back off and say, guys, we got to figure something else out. What that other thing is probably continuing along TV or Disney Plus streaming. And we didn't touch on it. Video games are in a great spot. Great spot.
Yeah, they're in a great spot here. I think your point is pretty good about the plan with Mandalorian Grogu being the test. Well, I hear it's like, okay, is there an audience for Star Wars movies here? I think that I'm worried about is I know they're pot committed on the Rey movie because they seem to think that she's the only character in the sequels that has any sort of storytelling future. To me, that one needs to go like even further back than it is right now because you're having so much development hell issues with that movie. I do not want to touch the character of Rey because if you get it wrong, you completely destroy that character forever. And she's probably the only character from the sequel that has any sort of equity story lies for the audience to continue with here.
It's your only hope.
Yeah, the only hope for the sequels to have any resilience here. I think the Mandiverse has to get tied up here because you can't drag it forever. I think we got to get this finished sooner rather than later. I think like once we get this done, I think we need to sort of push the boundaries further out, like Memeobi has said. I think like we act like it was an idea, but was not executed very well. I need to get out of this time where like as soon as you do something, somebody's go, oh, but in this book, this didn't happen, or Kiani Mundi wasn't born yet. He shouldn't be showing up in this show. Like we need to give these people room to tell stories and not feel like, as James Mangold has said in the past, that like the canon is so like, ridiculous that like I'm gonna get tripped up the second I try and write a line in the story. So I think future eras here, set in the universe, new characters, new villains, like sort of tie up your loose ends here. Feel free to push the story out further either direction. Like get out of the postage stamp, please. That's my pitch to Disney. So I'll throw it to Pete or Moby, whoever has an idea next.
I have a lot of ideas, but my main ideas for going forward is finish The Mandalorian, like you said, close it out, finish it out, it's done, and have a good finale. Like don't drag it out too long. Don't be like a cable TV show and make it go on and on and on and on. Finish it, make it good. I'm okay with a Rey movie. I think they shouldn't do it 15 years. I think it should be a lot earlier. I think what they should do, what would be cool in my mind, is like she has like the books or whatever, and talks about some planet with some cool force power. She goes to that planet, she meets some dude, and he like teaches her force power, and he like, and then they make like a little group, a little team of like 3 or 4 people, like yeah, and then they go around and like, and then during that they meet up with some big bad guy, and then they have like I'm imagining they're doing more than one movie with this, but if it's just one, like have it where maybe she's not super OP and she's like learning. And I think people would receive that better if she's like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. And there's all these other people in the galaxy that still use the Force I just didn't know about. And kind of like bringing her back, I think people would enjoy that better. And then I do think they should do a Lando show. I think that would do really well. I don't think it'd be a good movie. But out of the shows, because like it was 2020, they released like a bunch of posters of all these shows, like Rogue, like whatever, Rogue Squadron and like Lando. I think Lando, people loved him in Solo. I think just stick with that actor. Don't do old Lando. Like, sorry, buddy. Like, it's just we need a young Lando, and just have him going on crazy adventures. Like, I don't think they should make it R. I think they could do PG-13, like make it a little edgy, but like nothing crazy. And I think finishing Andor out, I think would be pretty strong. But that's like my takes on like the future. Like, I mean, obviously, like I want whatever, but I think out of what we have and what I see them maybe projecting for the future, that's kind of like the direction that I could honestly see them going, and I hope they go.
Yeah. So in terms of the Lando thing, real quick, before I go to Pete here, like, what do you think of the latest state of this thing that Donald Glover has said it's got to be a movie and I'm going to do it?
I mean, I think it's great. I think you should. I mean, I like if they want to do a movie, like fine. I mean, I think I like shows better because they can really go more in depth and see a lot more. Like Mandalorian, like I'm kind of bummed it's a movie. Like I feel like it'd be cooler if they were like 45, 50-minute episodes. Like I don't know why they don't realize that people want that. Like there's like The Boys. Like people watch like an hour and 10-minute episodes and people love it. We don't need 30-minute episodes. Like your audience isn't necessarily only 13-year-olds. There's a lot of mainly not 13-year-olds.
Yeah, sure. Here, so Pete, I'll let you wrap it up here. Your path forward for Star Wars.
Yeah, so kind of piggyback off what Mimo we just said, I think we need like an adult Star Wars show. Something rated R, something gory, something Game of Thrones-esque when it comes to the violence. Really, really drive that point home. Maybe a Sith movie, maybe a Sith show, something that shows the really, really dark stuff. I think Alkalite was going to try to do that, and it just kind of, obviously didn't work out. I also think that the best path forward in order for Star Wars to get the traction it needs again is that they need to get to an episode 10. They need to do it in a good way, establish some sort of backing, right? Doing the Mandalorian, Mandoverse, like Nick said, test it out in the movies, see how being in the movies is again. But I think we need to build up to a storyline that gets us to episode 10. We do another trilogy, but a trilogy done right, meaning like it done in the past, the original trilogy and also the prequel trilogy, and have another compelling big bad that's going to be bad the entire time and actually have a good versus evil.
You don't
Um,
want Palpatine to come back in 12?
I feel like he should, but I don't know if
Yeah,
the world is
that'd be
ready for that
sick.
yet,
Yeah.
That'd be
you know?
so cool if they did that. That'd be amazing. That'd
But
be
yeah,
so.
but
Yeah.
but like yeah, I just feel like to get that, because I mean, let's be honest, the hype around the Disney Plus shows for us very high. For the general Star Wars public is not really doing that well than if you said episode 10's coming out, right? So I think we need Disney needs to poise themselves and get themselves to an episode 10 to get that traction back.
Yeah, and you're fine going with Horcrux rules for Palpatine at some point.
Yeah, no, I think we need to move on.
Yeah,
We need a different big bad, a different whatever government, whatever you want, however you want to do it. We need a much darker show for adults. Make it violent. Make it, just make it like not realistic. Obviously, it's not realistic. It's Star Wars, but make it so it's a little bit more like, okay, it's a lightsaber battle. People are dying. Like this is what it looks like versus like, making it kiddie.
yeah,
And we need to get to episode 10. We need to, and just stay away. Just stay away from what we did. We did it already. They did it well in from episodes 1 through 6. Just stay away from it.
yeah. And on your point about the adult Star Wars show, with like the violence and like the like more stuff here, and this is again an error. Last of Us season 2 is coming. KOTOR is right there. It is right there if you want to do it, and I think it will be very well received. You do that storyline.
I don't disagree with you.
Yeah. All right. So I think we made a lot of progress. I think we gave them some ideas here. Although maybe Nick, we should forward this on to Mr. Converse here and have him pass it on to Disney so we know he's checked in on us.
Oh, is that
That's the guy, the actor who played
Tim's dad?
yeah, Wim's dad's the actor who played Wim, his dad, Memeobi, commented on one of our reels during Skeleton Crew. Basically told us we were wrong about assuming any Mandalorian people were going to show up.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah,
Assumed.
he-
It's not
he just-
confirmed.
Assumed. Assumed.
Yeah, he just completely broke his what is the contract, Mike? The
NDA.
he completely broke his NDA contract, telling us what was going to happen in the show. So that was insane. I couldn't believe it was real. And then we started looking at his profile. I think it's real. I think it's really the Wim's actor, his father.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Very interesting that he would do that just to tell us we're wrong. So anyone else, if you feel the need to comment that we're wrong, please do so.
Yeah, and
We love to hear it. We love to hear it.
Mr. Converse, Charles Converse, you're listening to this, feel free to forward this podcast over to Disney so they can take our input into this.
Yeah, tell your son he did a great job as Wim. We really liked him.
Yeah, we loved Wim in the show.
He loved all the kids.
It was a great show, Skeleton Crew. So, Memeobi, I want to thank you for coming on. You're spending some time with us on Star Wars Podcast Day. Just remind the audience one more time. If you want to keep up with your content, how can they do that?
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, happy Star Wars Podcast Day. If you like this episode, you can go listen to mine. It'll be up today as well, which is Memeobi's Galaxy. And you can follow me on Instagram, which is Obi1_Memeobi. And we have a lot of fun over there. So thanks for having me on again. This has been fun.
Yeah, for a lot of fun. What are you talking about on Star Wars Podcast Day?
Oh shoot, I'm talking about a lot of what ifs, not similar to this, but like a lot of I'm doing a big hodgepodge of just Star Warsy things. What ifs, some would you rather's, some just like what we want to see. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a good time, I think.
Definitely check that episode out, guys.
Sounds good.
Pete, people want to follow you, so we have to do that.
Yeah, at Concy29 on Twitter, CONSY29, AP Tyler 308 created the background I'm using. Make sure you check them out on Reddit.
Nick, one more time, remind the audience how to follow us on social media.
At Sky Guys Podcast, basically everywhere, including the new Blue Sky, and at Sky Guys Pod at gmail.com if you want to email us. Not podcast, at Sky Guys Pod at gmail.com.
Yep. You can also follow me on social media at mphillips331. It's MPHILIPS 331. This is go over the Just on the Suffering podcast. We got you ready for Super Bowl 59. We did our whole betting special as well. And Nick, you stopped by. We finally talked some Squid Game.
Yeah, except we haven't recorded that at the time of recording here. So excited to do that though.
Yeah, so that's coming up here. And any Super Bowl prediction for you, Nick?
Oh God, just don't let the Eagles win. I don't want the Chiefs to win either, but don't let the Eagles win. We can't. As Memeobi probably doesn't know, considering he doesn't know us, or it's just me actually. I don't know what fan you are, Pete, but as a Giants fan, I can't see the Eagles win again. I don't know. I have no idea, Pete. Are you a Jets fan?
Yes.
Unfortunately.
Ah, all right. Well, we both suffer.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Moby, he's in Nick's suffering all year, and that Saquon Barkley is on the Eagles leading him to glory.
Nice. Well, that's all right. I don't sport, so I
Better off. It's torture. It's torture.
yeah.
I think you made a wise call there, not getting involved with at least with our teams for sure.
Yeah. Well,
all right. So that's it for us this week. And next week, guys, we will be talking about, as Pete hinted into earlier, we're going to touch on abandoned Star Wars storylines. So we're going to have a list here of about 10 storylines that were abandoned at some point by Star Wars that were teased and never fulfilled on. And Nick, we're going to sort of, go ahead and suggest, like what should we pick up? What do we want? Say, it's fine. And just sort of make a list, like real list. So like what 1 to 10, like rank what storylines want to see picked up.
that is very interesting. I'm really excited to do it. And go Darth Maul.
Yeah. Darth Maul definitely make an appearance on that list. We'll be back next week to talk about our abandoned Star Wars storylines. But until then, may the Force be with you.